The blossoming of a romantic relationship is always accompanied by excitement and anticipation. The heart fills with joy at every message, and thoughts revolve around future dates. However, unfortunately, not all couples are destined to be together for long. Often, people quickly realize their incompatibility and decide to part ways. This is especially true in cases where the relationship lasted only a few weeks. Usually, the breakup happens calmly, without any serious consequences. But for some individuals, relationships are not just about finding their other half, but an opportunity to control their partner. And when they lose that control, it can end in tragedy. This is exactly what happened to a young girl named Lily James. Lily was born in May 2002 to parents Jamie and Peter. Along with her younger brother Max, she grew up in New South Wales, Australia. Everyone who knew Lily described her as a cheerful, sensitive, and sociable girl. She was smart, full of energy, and always ready to help her loved ones. Lily loved to challenge herself and achieved success in almost everything she tried. From a young age, Lily showed an extraordinary interest in sports, especially dancing and water polo. She was a member of the school water polo team coached by her father. This brought them very close and created a special bond between father and daughter. In 2019, Lily won the Under-18 Junior Swimming Championship. In addition, she repeatedly received awards for her dance performances. In 2020, after graduating from high school, Lily became a student at the Sydney University of Technology, majoring in sports management. In parallel with her studies, she worked as a water polo coach at the elite St. Andrew's School. Lily's life was very busy and dynamic. She skillfully combined her studies with work and constantly strived for self-improvement. Her students adored Lily for her boundless optimism, support, and inspiring advice. On the evening of October 25, 2023, Lily's worried parents, Jamie and Peter, noticed that their daughter had not returned home after her work shift at the school. Concerned about this fact, they decided to contact the police and report the girl's disappearance. But at that time, law enforcement did not actively take up the search, since there were seemingly no compelling reasons for concern. Later, closer to midnight, an alarming call came in on the emergency hotline. An anonymous caller reported that the body of a young woman was lying on the grounds of St. Andrew's School and even specified the exact location where it could be found. Police officers immediately went to the specified address and began a thorough inspection of the area. Soon, in the school gym, the lifeless body of a girl was found. As the anonymous caller had said, it was located in one of the toilet stalls of the sports complex. The first minutes of examining the crime scene made it clear that a brutal murder had occurred. The victim had numerous head injuries, which disfigured her face beyond recognition. According to the results of the examination, it was established that the cause of death was multiple blows with a heavy object similar to a hammer. Immediately after the horrific discovery, a large-scale investigation began. In the coming days, the school administration sent letters to parents and students announcing the temporary suspension of the educational process. Students were transferred to distance learning at other branches of the institution, and the school grounds were completely isolated for investigative actions. Police officers meticulously examined every corner of the building and adjacent streets in search of evidence that could help solve this chilling crime. On the morning of October 26, the identity of the victim was officially established. She turned out to be 21-year-old Lily James. The news of the girl's tragic death shocked not only her family and friends, but also the entire local sports and education community. Students, parents, and colleagues expressed heartfelt condolences, remembering Lily as an incredibly kind, gifted, and cheerful person. In the girl's hometown, people organized a spontaneous memorial where they lit candles and left words of support for her family. This tragedy became another example of brutal violence in the region. Lily James's name made the front pages of newspapers, and her fate became a symbol of the need for change at the Denbrook Aquatic Sports Center, where the girl was a true star and swimming champion. Friends and loved ones brought flowers and notes to the makeshift memorial in Lily's memory. Her best friend Christina, with tears in her eyes, said that Lily was like a sister to her and that they had so many shared plans and dreams that were never meant to come true. During the investigation, detectives carefully reviewed footage from surveillance cameras installed at the school and the surrounding area. This made it possible to reconstruct the chronology of events on that fateful evening of October 25. Around 7 p.m., cameras recorded Lily entering the gym bathroom, followed a moment later by an unknown man. He was there for about an hour, after which he left alone. Lily never left the premises, which led investigators to believe that the attack occurred during that time interval. Analysis of the video recordings allowed for the quick identification of the suspect. He turned out to be 24-year-old Paul Tyson. He was born in the Netherlands and moved to Australia with his family in 2015. Paul studied at the same St. Andrew's School from grades 10 to 12 and was the captain of the school sports team. After graduating, he returned to the Netherlands for several years, and then, having obtained a work visa, came back to Australia. At St. Andrew's School, Paul worked as a teacher for the upper grades, as well as a cricket and hockey coach. Acquaintances of Paul had mixed reviews about him. Former classmates described him as a smart, ambitious, and sociable guy who simply lived for sports. But at the same time, colleagues and some students noted his arrogance and difficult personality. In August of the same year, Paul rented an apartment that he shared with two roommates, a girl and a hockey player. According to them, he was quite unsociable and generally did not cause any problems with his behavior. About 5 weeks before the tragic events, Lily and Paul started dating. They did not publicize their relationship, although Paul's closest friends knew about his romance with the girl. Some called their relationship secret, although in reality, they were probably just in the early stages, so the couple had not yet had time to announce it publicly. Closer to midnight, Paul Tyson contacted the rescue service and reported that there was a dead body at the school. Thanks to this call, law enforcement was able to determine his location. However, by the time the investigative team arrived, Paul was no longer at the specified location. A large-scale search operation was launched using air and ground resources in the hope of finding at least some traces of the missing person. During the search, the Lexus car used by Paul was found and immediately sent for forensic examination. Also, nearby, a garbage can with wireless headphones belonging to the suspect was found. Unfortunately, no other leads were found that could help establish Paul's whereabouts. On the morning of October 27, construction workers working in the Walkless area contacted the police with a report of a body lying on the rocks by the water, being washed by the waves. This area was located where the search for Paul Tyson had been conducted the day before. Rescuers arrived at the scene with a helicopter and water transport, and they pulled the body out of the water. The man was completely undressed, and the condition of his body indicated a long time in the water. The body was found pinned between the rocks at the foot of a cliff. The rescuers had to make a lot of effort and work in extremely difficult conditions, but eventually they were able to lift the body to the surface. The deceased turned out to be 24-year-old Paul Tyson. Reconstructing his route, investigators established that after attacking Lily, he headed to the cliff, where he got rid of the murder weapon, and then spent about 2 hours in the car, after which he called the police. Having confessed, Paul reached the edge of the cliff and jumped down, thus settling accounts with life. It later became known that about 3 weeks before the tragedy, Paul, together with Lily, had come to these places to visit the girl's friend. This led investigators to believe that it was then that he had a good look at the area and, perhaps, had already planned his further actions at that time. Meanwhile, at the school where Lily worked, colleagues and students created an impromptu memorial and brought flowers there in memory of the girl. Everyone remembered her as an incredibly talented water polo coach and an unsurpassed dancer. Lily's family expressed sincere gratitude for the support during this mournful time, noting how devastated and shocked they were by this loss. When the police officially confirmed Paul's death, his parents living in the Netherlands were informed of the tragic news. The news of such a terrible act by their own son came as a real shock to them. Even after the completion of the search and the establishment of all the circumstances of this case, there remained many unanswered questions. The most important of them was how a person who had a reputation as an ordinary, friendly coach could suddenly turn into a brutal murderer. Investigators and forensic experts who dealt with the investigation of this case tried to understand what had become the trigger for such an unexpected and chilling finale. They found out that Paul was a very sociable person who dedicated his life to sports. However, after the pandemic, others noticed striking changes in his behavior. He became withdrawn, his room turned into a complete mess, and he himself became irritable and alienated. Some of Paul's acquaintances noted that over time, he began to show an increasing desire for control and manipulation. And although his romance with Lily lasted only a very short time, and the girl herself probably tried to avoid conflict during the breakup, for Paul this became a real disaster. The loss of control over the situation provoked an outburst of aggression, which he directed at Lily. What is striking is that after committing the crime, Paul Tyson did not try to hide the traces of the crime. On the contrary, all his actions indicated a desire for Lily's body to be found as soon as possible. He even used the girl's phone to send a message to her father asking him to pick up his daughter from school. Usually, criminals take this step to create the illusion that everything is fine with the victim, but in this case, the motive was completely different. Moreover, for hours after the murder, Paul himself called the police and reported what he had done. These details convinced many that Paul was acting in a state of passion, unable to cope with the rejection of his beloved girl. His actions indicated a complete loss of self-control and an unwillingness to accept the breakup. Detectives who worked on this case and analyzed the evidence concluded that the attack on Lily was not spontaneous. Paul had carefully planned it in advance. He borrowed someone else's car, purchased the murder weapon, and brought it to school on the day of the tragedy. All these facts point to the intentional nature of the crime. Other experts who studied the circumstances of the incident noted the atypical nature of the development of events. After all, Paul had never been noticed to have any manifestations of aggressive behavior before, at least no official reports of such incidents had been received. He had never used against Lily or anyone else. Their romance lasted only 5 weeks, but during this short time, Paul managed to show a morbid desire for absolute control over the girl. And when she decided to leave him, he could not accept it and crossed the line of the law. It is possible that after committing the crime, Paul felt guilty or he was simply afraid of responsibility for what he had done. It is quite possible that he deliberately left Lily's body in a visible place so that it would be found more quickly. There are known cases when criminals specifically take this step, as if leaving their special signature at the crime scene. Although sometimes this can also be dictated by sincere remorse. But since Paul took his own life, the exact motives for his actions, unfortunately, cannot be established. Some experts suggest that the reason for the tragedy was Paul's inability to accept the loss of power over Lily. It is significant that he did not try to cover his tracks, but called the police himself and confessed to what he had done. This may indicate an acute internal conflict, on the one hand, the realization of the horror of what he had done, and on the other, the reluctance to bear punishment for it. After calling the rescue service, Paul headed to the cliff and took his own life. This case clearly demonstrates how an obsessive desire to control another person can take on fatal, destructive forms, even if the relationship lasted only a very short time. It makes one think about the importance of paying close attention to alarming, warning signs in the behavior of others and the need to listen to one's own intuition. The slightest feeling that something is going wrong is already sufficient reason to stop communication in order not to endanger oneself. After all, usually such terrible stories happen between people who have been bound by long years of living together or long-term serious relationships. And here we see how a man who knew a girl for only 5 weeks, in this short period of time, worked himself up to such a state that he committed a terrible crime. The loss of control over Lily became so unbearable for him that it led to tragic consequences. After committing the crime, Paul chose to voluntarily depart from life, not wanting to look into the eyes of relatives, friends, and the whole society. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.